Welcome back to Following Noadon, a Stormlight podcast. This week is the finale of The Way of Kings. We have finished the book. We ended part 5 last week. We have Tim back again joining us to talk about the entire book as a whole for this episode. We've got quite the endeavor in front of us, gentlemen. How we feeling? Paul, how you feeling?
My 2 words are I cannot sum this up in 2 words. I'm excited to talk about this, kind of look at it as a whole rather than just little tidbits, our few chapters. So I'm really excited to dig into it.
Elliot, how you feeling?
A bit exhausted. We are, in my copy, 1,250 pages later from when we started. It's been quite the long journey, but I've enjoyed every step of it. This was a blast. This was a lot of fun.
Tim, welcome back. How are you feeling?
I am excited. You guys are finally done with this one. Only 2 more to go, and then a third,
and then a third one coming out in a month. Yeah,
it'll be great.
Alrighty. So before we really hop in, I want to get y'all's rating of The Way of Kings. If you were to go on to onto a book website, like on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Goodreads or something like that, and you're rating this book based on its plot, its characters, the world building, the theme, and the point of view. So we'll start with you, Paul. Kind of walk us through each of your scores and why you gave it.
Yeah, certainly. So I thought this was, I've actually never rated a book like this before, in all honesty.
Mm-hmm.
But so first off with the plot, the overall storyline we have going on, I gave it a 9 out of 10. I will say, I think I was pretty mean to this book. I was not letting it off easy. I've been singing praises, I feel like, throughout the book, and it's outstanding. My score is very high, but I did not go easy on it still. The plot was a 9 out of 10 because it's very exciting, but the more I think about it, while you're going through, you don't really know what the big end goal is, or what's going to be the end resolution.
Sure.
So that's the reason I pulled it down to a 9 instead of a 10.
Gotcha.
Characters was my lowest score with an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
Not because the characters aren't good. I think the characters are amazing, especially kind of the secondary characters. I think are fantastic. The primary characters are amazing as well. But I feel like compared to other fantasy stories and things like that, I may not be as big of a fan of the main characters in this story as maybe I would have liked have been. But it was very good. So that was where I was really being the meanest to this book, was on the characters. I gave it an 8 out of 10. World building, an easy 10 for me. The way kind of comboed with point of view. You learn about the world from the story and from the things that are happening to the characters, which I really liked. It felt very fluid. So a 10 on both of those, as well as theme. I gave that a 10 as well. The hero's journey there. It was very fluid and very exciting. So
cool. Elliot, how would you rate The Way of Kings?
Okay, so plot, I went the same as Paul with a 9 for plot, and I'll echo Paul's thoughts. I was trying to be a little bit harsh, honestly, which my score is still quite high as well, which I think should sing the praises of this book pretty well. This was an awesome book. I really enjoyed it, but I tried to really look at this from a harsh critic's point of view, and I threw a 9 for plot. I think there were just 1 or 2 moments where I was jarred out of the story, just to kind of process some things and go, okay, really, all right. There were just a few moments that didn't quite feel as fluid to me in the plot as maybe it could have been, but overall, fantastic. Really love the arc and the way that we pass through the plot itself. I thought was excellent. Characters, I threw a 10 on characters, and I think that was really just for the fact that I love these characters. I thought they were really creative. I thought that they were really compelling. I thought they were really relatable in a way that I haven't read characters like this in a really long time. And I think there's definitely I gave it a 10, so I don't know if I can say this. Maybe some room for improvement, but I really just thought these characters were awesome and made me think. Really, I was interested in all the characters all the time. So I think they were that tells me, at least for me, they were really well written. World building, Paul, you said it, easy 10. Easy 10 in world building, both in the scope of possibilities in what in this realm. I feel like I'm in a different world. Sometimes you read a fantasy book and it just feels like, oh, well, this is Earth with orcs running around kind of thing.
Right.
But this was different. Everything felt different. There was, you kept getting reminders thrown at you that, oh, well, I'm in a completely different universe basically, and that was fantastic. And but then also just a way that we get to explore it kind of piece by piece, and especially the way we did in this podcast was awesome. Tons of details to find. I feel like there's so much more that's out there that we could find. Excellent job on the world building. Theme. I went for 10 on theme, and that was just because I really liked the discussion points that this book brought up. It really got you asking the tough questions. It wasn't just the surface level basic kind of fiction. This really dove into, what does it mean to be a human being? What does it mean to have a moral code? What does it mean to make tough decisions? And all of that is stuff that I think is worth discussing. It makes a book worth reading for me. 10 out of 10 on theme. Last one, point of view. Here's where I gave my lowest score, an 8 out of 10 on point of view. And the only reason for that was, I think, honestly, the one critique I would have of this book, and this is my completely unqualified opinion, so people who are way more qualified than me can probably give you a much better judgment here. But I threw 8 out of 10 simply because there were some scenes that left me a little bit wanting. I felt like there were some scenes that I kind of left not feeling like I had been exposed to enough of like the scenery or the sounds that are going on or the smells and things like that. I was missing maybe some of those kind of sensory experiences that some other books are and authors are really great at. And there were some scenes in this book that were great, especially visually. There's so many scenes in this book that I can totally perfectly picture in my mind, but there were a few other scenes that kind of left me a little bit wanting. So 8 out of 10 for point of view, for a 47 out of 50 overall. This was a fantastic book. Fantastic.
When you say lack of smells, I do agree with you that when I think of an author who's really good at that, I think of Brian Jakes. Whenever you read a Redwall book,
yes,
you know exactly what they're eating all the time.
Taste the food. Yep.
Yes, and he spends a full page talking about the rolls or whatever they're eating. So yes, I agree with you that you can't always smell everything of Roshar. Tim, what do you got?
Well, I'm glad you can't always smell everything in Roshar, because that's Bridgman. Ugh.
Bridgman.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah, for me, I didn't find a whole lot wrong in this book. This is a book I've read a lot of times. I think this is my 6th time that I've read through it, 5th or 6th. And taking it as a contained book as opposed to the whole, that's a little bit difficult for me. But for the plot, I love the story of Kaladin and what he goes through, and even just as a single book, I gave that a 10 out of 10 because it's good. But it's also different from something like Lord of the Rings, which I would say is my favorite book, because it is one book, and like throughout that book you have the whole story, whereas I know there's more to the story to come. And then characters, this is the only series I've read where all of the characters I've been like, oh, I do that, yeah. And I've been able to learn so much about myself from these characters. So 100%, 10 out of 10. World building, Brandon Sanderson is just so good at it. Even now, still, every time I read through, I'm finding new things, new like world-shattering things, but you're never going to get it until you go back and read through it several more times. And so I gave it a 10 out of 10 there. And the theme of the hero's journey, I think Sanderson hit it directly on with this book and Kaladin's journey. It is perhaps the epitome of what that hero's journey is. Overcoming obstacles and choosing what is right because it's right. So I gave that a 10 out of 10 as well. And then going to the point of view, there was never anywhere that, at least on this read through, that I was ever pulled out of it because it was boring writing or anything. I was always engaged, always looking for where's that next new little hint that I'm going to find of what's to come. And so I gave it a 10 out of 10 as well. And so I guess I'm the boring one of the group, but I gave it a 50 out of 50.
Perfect score.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So for me, it's the plot of The Way of Kings is an easy 10 out of 10. The first time I read this, I resonated with Kaladin so much. I love Kaladin. He's very dear to my heart. And watching his journey through The Way of Kings is probably my favorite thing I've ever read, ever. And that's pretty easy for me to say. I don't think anything rivals that for me. Characters. So I gave characters a 9 out of 10. And I might say something that's a little bit controversial here. But I think Shallan is boring in The Way of Kings.
Whoa.
The truth comes out.
So Paul, when you said this back 3 months ago, 4 months ago when we first met Shallan, I smiled to myself because I've read these two other books here, and Shallan is one of my favorite characters in the entire Stormlight archive. But I think in The Way of Kings specifically, I think she's boring. So there's nothing against the character of Shallan, because as you get to know her, she's one of my favorite characters, and because Kaladin is so well done, and then you flip to Shallan and she's reading books, and then she's reading more books, and then she's reading more books, and that's fine and it's necessary. It's just a little bit flawed in my view, and 9 out of 10 for me. World building with you guys, easy 10 out of 10. It is really easy to get sucked into Roshar and want to know so much more about what he creates here. High storms, like underwater crab things, but none of it's actually underwater. The shattered plains, the chasms, it's all so good that you just want to learn more every time you read another chapter. Theme of what's going on and what the author is trying to what the journey the author's bringing you on, easy 10 out of 10 for me. Kaladin is learning to protect and learning to care about the right things and not feel guilty about the wrong things. So it's okay to care, as we've learned, but not everything is your fault. If you tried everything you can to help, you can't take that with you and blame yourself for that. And you need to pick yourself up and carry on because other people need you in this moment. So easy 10 out of 10 for me. That's what Kaladin learns. Point of view. So on this outline, I actually have 10 out of 10. I'm going to change it back down to a 9 out of 10. And here's why. You have this grand cast of characters, and it's great, and I love it. However, the whole whole device of switching back and forth between a Shallan chapter and a Kaladin chapter and an old, like a young Kaladin chapter, different chapters being split into that, it's kind of jarring if you're so sucked into Kaladin's story. Sometimes I just want to read Kaladin chapter after Kaladin chapter after Kaladin chapter, and I don't know a real good way to do it otherwise, but that would be my only critique of Point of View, is that I've just learned that Kaladin's about to be strung up in a high storm. I don't want to go read Shallan, even though I have to for the world building. But anyway, so 9 out of 10 for that. His prose are amazing. How you learn about Roshar is amazing. Just like the discussions between Shallan and Yasna and Teft and Kaladin and all sorts of these things. All of that's amazing. Solid 9 out of 10 for me. 48 out of 50.
All right, some good scores there.
True,
Yeah.
True. I do have one thing I want to say about this as well before we move on.
Sure.
So with your point of view case, just as a side note, so I totally get the like jarring aspect, right? Kaladin's being strung up, and then it's like Shallan chapter. But I think this was the reason why I gave it a 10 out of 10, in my opinion, because especially later in the book, because whenever you start seeing these other storylines is where you learn little details that affect the other storylines, and you kind of get to cross connect almost, and I think that's like incredible. That's like my favorite part. So
It makes for a very rewarding read, because you get fed like little rewards for your hard work. You go and you read the boring Shallan chapter, but you just learned a couple tidbits there that are going to be really important later on, and it kind of feeds you little rewards, like one M&M at a time.
A lot of the brilliant nuance as well between the Dalinar storyline and the Kaladin storyline, that Dalinar would be learning something about leadership in the Way of Kings, and Kaladin, that very next chapter, is struggling with that exact thing with his bridgemen. He's trying to get them to succeed, and Dalinar is trying to figure out how to get Roshar as a whole and the Alethkar to succeed. Thanks for watching, guys. That was the first part of our finale episode. There'll be several videos coming out this week. I don't know quite how many. I'm recording this right at the end of editing this one you're seeing here, and there'll be a couple more this week, and be sure to tune in for those. Thanks, guys.